Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Revenge is Ice Cream. And first up we have Steal My Work and Badmouth Me, I'll End Your Career. I was once a young, naive, and perhaps a little too trusting aspiring writer. I met Helen, mid-40s, blonde, blue-eyed, and Caucasian, relevant to the story, through Judy, my mentor, when I was trying to get my first screenplay, a murder mystery, produced into a feature film. Being green, I had never worked in the business before, and I trusted Judy implicitly. She was gold, a wonderful person, and, as it would turn out, the polar opposite of Helen. By the time I met Helen, a spoiled toddler trapped in a 40-something woman's body, and self-proclaimed 20-year theatre veteran. My work had been copyrighted for 6 months. PSA, it's imperative to protect your creative property, and me doing just that saved my butt. Judy had previously worked with Helen on a prior film and suggested her for a day player role in my murder mystery. For those who don't know, a day player is an actor with approximately half a dozen lines and can usually film their part in a day or less. I trusted Judy's judgment, so I messaged Helen and sent her the entire script. My first mistake, PSA, never send your entire script, only script sides, sample dialogue, and bio and description of the character. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches, both physical and legal. Plus, there's some performers that don't even read the entire script. They just go through, get all their own scenes, and make a shorter script with just their stuff in it. Hence, who was it? Was it Toni Collette in The Sixth Sense? She didn't know she was in a horror movie. I may have the name wrong, I don't have time to look it up. But, yeah, fun little bit of trivia. I ended up having several conversations with Helen. She seemed quite lovely. She was an actress, so I will give her that she definitely had her phone etiquette down pat. Little did I know she was just getting me to lower my walls before she went in for the kill. Helen had accepted the role in the tentative production, and we talked virtually every day after that. She was quickly becoming one of my go-to confidants. My second mistake, as Helen and I grew closer, Judy and I grew further apart. One day, Helen wrote and asked me if I needed my script proofread. I told her there was no such need for that, as it was already copyright protected, including any errors that might be present. This becomes relevant later. She practically begged me and claimed she just wanted to help. I told her if she took it upon herself to do that, she would not be paid and there was no money and her efforts were pointless. Her behavior struck me as odd. How this seemingly strong and confident woman had bizarrely behaved like a child, begging her daddy for candy. Didn't make any sense. About a week had passed. Judy wrote me and asked if I was able to speak on the phone. I told her I was available, and she called me. She greeted me and promptly got to the point. She inquired why Helen was now claiming she was the co-writer of my script. I was floored. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. I thanked her, ended the call, and immediately phoned Helen. Being continually unemployed, all Helen did was chain smoke in her bathrobe and surf the net all day, while her saintly husband worked a hard labor job. She answered on the first ring. I asked if she knew anything about what Judy had told me. She paused before answering, then tried to pass it off as a misunderstanding. I decided, I really hate that word, and all variations thereof. I decided to play my hand and bluff that other people had told me the same thing. Busted, she caved. Well, I did help you correct everything. Volunteering to copy-edit my script does not make you the co-writer. You did a poor job, by the way. My work was already copyright protected in my name 6 months before I met you. This constitutes plagiarism. No, it doesn't. She paused then. What's plagiarism? I was dumbfounded. The fact that she denied being guilty of something without knowing the meaning of the word was perplexing. Look it up. Delete your copy of the script right now. You will only get a new one when and if I choose to cast you. By the time I ended the call, it was obvious she was angry. Her pride had been wounded, and I should have anticipated her retaliation. Again. Hindsight. The next time I was over at her house, I went on her computer when she wasn't looking. On a hunch, I checked her hard drive, and there was my script. I deleted it. She later finagled a new copy from a well-meaning cast member and repeated the whole illegal rewrite. It was then that I found out that she was not only claiming to have written the entire script herself, but she was also going to have the leading role. Both counts were easily debunked as 1. I had the copyright certificate to prove I was the sole writer, 2. The female lead is a 23-year-old woman of Puerto Rican descent. Helen is white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and at the time was in her mid-40s. But she could play younger, right? 3. Helen's writing was absolutely bordering on indecipherable. The fact that she was insisting she'd written anything other than a bad check or a grocery list was laughable. Despite her claim of having a 4-year college degree, she made countless careless, lazy mistakes that, to a casual observer, would suggest she dropped out while still in elementary school. Examples of her intellectual laziness included, but were not limited to, run-on sentences consisting of only lowercase letters, failure to capitalize proper nouns, using "and" in the same sentence more than once, using commas as end punctuation, misspelling simple grade school level words, mixing up her homonyms, using clumps of periods to break up her sentences, etc. All of which completely contradicted her claim that she had written a 100-plus page pristine screenplay. In addition to a highly embellished typo-filled resume, she tried passing off an overly filtered camera phone photo as a headshot, and had no material for an acting demo reel. Anyone with 20 years in the business would have had all these things and more. It should go without saying, if you can't prove something, do not put it on your resume. Thanks to the efforts of Lana, Helen had gotten into the good graces of Jim, the noted award-winning director. Lana was the big-hearted other lead actress and his close friend. Helen had spun one of her infamous fictional tales of woe which tugged at Lana's heartstrings and, in return, led Lana to vouch for her. Molly's entitlement and complete lack of professionalism was duly noted by Jim. Despite her questionable, spotty resume, he only tolerated her for 2 reasons. She was the writer, and he felt professionally obligated to as a favor to Lana. I later came to learn Jim was just biding his time until Helen either shaped up, or she failed her audition and he shipped her out. The role Helen wanted required a very strong actress, which she was not. Failing her inevitable screen test would have given Jim the grounds to have her replaced and, more accurately, fired. This wasn't his first rodeo. In the meantime, Jim knew Lana could keep Helen in line. I don't fault Lana at all for buying into Helen's tall tales, as she excelled at gaslighting and emotionally manipulated people to get her way. This, however, was the beginning of the end. Helen immediately threw her weight around like she was, in her words, the second coming of Meryl Streep. I wasn't aware Meryl had stopped coming, but all right. And, being the writer, demanded a producer credit as well. Her narcissism had reached new heights. Think Faye Dunaway's portrayal of Joan Crawford in Mommy Dearest, and you'll get the idea. Unfortunately for her, Jim was quickly losing his patience. Upon learning that Helen was now claiming she wrote the entire script, she sought out Judy for advice. Regrettably, Judy hated conflict, and had long since grown tired of playing referee between me and Helen. She dropped out of the production. I was left to fend for myself. Retrospectively, I realize her exit caused me to have to put on my big boy pants and confront my dilemma. On one hand, I was this close to spearheading my first feature film. I wasn't a greedy person. All I wanted was my writing credit and a walk-on role in it. On the other hand, the working script bore little to no resemblance to my original source material. Welcome to Hollywood. It had practically been taken over by a talentless wannabe producer/actress, whose stiff acting would have looked out of place in an adult film. It was clear the costs of being associated with Helen far outweighed the next to non-existent benefits. I was on the fence, but knew what I had to do. I was backed into a corner and about to break out my secret weapon, my copyright certificate. It would later turn out Judy was the first of several people to leave, referring to Helen as unprofessional, a crazy bitch, an amateur, a pain in the butt, and everything in between. I had heard whispers, but I wouldn't become aware of much of the internal conflict with her as the cause until after the fact. Helen, of course, always had an answer for everything, including why people kept dropping out, i.e. schedule conflicts, production delays, etc. It all seemed feasible, because these things do happen in the film world. Then, one day, I got a message from Don, the California-based graphic web designer, with a copy of the conceptual video done based on my screenplay. This was news to me. Lo and behold, guess who was in the leading role? If you guessed Helen, you get a cookie. The entire storyline had been completely changed. In the credits, she was listed as the writer. My name was nowhere to be found. Her excuse for why I was not in any way involved with the shoot for the promotional video: there was no time to get me involved. My name being mistakenly absent from the credits, a clerical error she promised to have fixed. It never was. I brought up that Don had been flown in from across the country to be the still photographer, yet I, who lived less than 60 miles away from the filming location, was left out of the loop. She ignored my question and blew me off. It felt like my soul had been crushed. My labor of love, my first screenplay, had been absconded by this no-talent phony. I was caught between tears of rage for a while. It was around the same time I decided to enact my revenge that I received a panicked phone call from Helen. She had a habit of calling at the most inopportune times. I could have been on a date, sleeping, working, etc. This instance was no exception. After both my landline and cell phone rang multiple times... a landline is a line that's connected to a big network that people back in the days used to use to talk to people. It was our equivalent of a smartphone, except they weren't very smart. Just, for the kids watching. Which they shouldn't be, because this channel isn't for them. I finally picked up the landline, from which I gave her an aggravated greeting. The following conversation is mostly from memory and paraphrased as it was a long time ago. What do you want? No time! Insert emotional rant as she beat around the bush in an attempt to justify her despicable, entitled behavior, all the while maintaining she was just an innocent bystander, yet acting guilty as sin. Who did you piss off this time? You overstepped your bounds again. It turns out Helen had tried to play the big boss and no one was having it. She copped an attitude with Tom, the producer, stating her orders were the director's orders. Her power play backfired when Tom called Jim to confirm. Jim saw red, and had effectively went on strike with Tom following suit. Between Tom and Jim, they had a combined 60 years' experience in the business, whereas Helen had virtually none. I later learned Lana apologized profusely for bringing Helen into the fold and had reluctantly played mediator between her two friends. She tried in vain to prevent Tom and Jim from quitting, but they had made up their minds. Neither of them wanted anything to do with Helen. The ultimatum was brought down. Either Helen went or they went. Them leaving would have created a domino effect and led to the production being halted. That is why Helen was flipping out. Not just because she was about to be outed as the cause of the whole mess. By this point I knew her too well and saw right through her drama queen antics. What right did you think you had to do that, Helen? Keep in mind, I know more than you think I do. If you lie, I will know. After a long pause, she shakily answered, Because I'm the co-writer. No, you're not. I'm so sick of you saying that. It's not only untrue, it's fraud. But I made changes to it. Unauthorized changes. You just admitted to plagiarism and copyright infringement. Can you bring forth documented proof that you were given permission from me to rewrite my entire script? You can't. What you did was highly unethical and illegal. But I'm speaking. You're listening. I'm not going to keep going in circles with you on this. If I have to scan my copyright certificate and put it on the net for everyone to see, I will. Dead silence. I turned my printer and scanner on and scanned a blank document. It had the desired effect, as she totally freaked out when she heard it. She was caught in her tangled web of deception, and her brain was short-circuiting as she kept trying to come up with convincing lies. You did know my work was copyright protected, didn't you? If you did, and I know you did, that doesn't just make you a criminal, it makes you a stupid criminal. You knowingly committed willful copyright infringement. I have a lawyer on retainer and the means to pursue a lawsuit. Believe me when I tell you I have more than enough solid evidence to prove my case if I choose to sue you. Don't do that! You're right. I'm not going to waste my time dragging you into court when the court of public opinion is so much more effective. What? I have a file 10 inches thick, screenshots, text messages, emails, all detailing the subterfuge and dubious tactics you employed to try to screw me out of my creative property. I also have the plagiarized hard copies containing your distinctive moniker on the title page in place of my name. All have timestamps. Add all that to my original hard copy of my script and my copyright certificate, I swear I'll crucify you. All people have to do is Google your name and they'll see you're full of it. Being a wannabe is one thing, but you'll never be able to shake the reputation of being labeled a liar and a thief. If this gets out, you'll be unemployable. It's not like people are beating down your door with job offers. Stick a fork in you, you're done. What? No retort? No spin doctor explanation? Go on, lie. It's what you do best. Of course, you could always shock the hell out of me and give the truth a whirl. I'm sorry. Why? Because you're wrong? Because you're caught, or because now everyone knows you for the scam artist that you are? Maybe all of the above. Either way, it's absolutely clear you have nothing even remotely resembling a conscience. Your pride and ego are too big to leave room for one. I really am sorry. Oh, not yet. But you will be. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, for starters, I'm going to use the F word. Fired. You're fired. You can't fire me. I'm speaking. I can do whatever I want. I own the copyright to my script. I'll say it again in case you didn't get it the first time. I own the rights to the script. I know. Then why did you do it? Did you honestly think you'd get away with trying to usurp my work and turn it into your own little vanity project? You know what, it doesn't matter anymore. Now, starting now, your name is off this project. That's my call. The writing credit you think you deserve because you plagiarized my script, gone. The leading role that you retooled to fit someone of your age and appearance, gone. The producing credit you demanded you receive for illegally rewriting my script, gone. Why do you hate me? Spare me the crocodile tears. If you put the energy you wasted conning people into actually going out on auditions and booking jobs, you'd be a working actress right now. Instead, you're a nobody that no one wants to work with, let alone be around. You're just a bored housewife chasing a pipe dream. Make no mistake, I'm not calling you a has-been, you're a never was. Seriously, how many people have gone no contact with you before you realize that you're the problem? Even your own stepdaughter doesn't talk to you because you're a vile bitch, and you can expect your son to do the same when he goes off to college. You're a complete failure as a professional, a horrible excuse for a human being and not worth any more of my time. You don't have to talk to me like that. I can change. I promise. I can change. Cut the bullshit. Save your empty promises for someone who cares, because I have no more fucks left to give. You better hope Lana does some fancy footwork and can prevent Tom and Jim from quitting. I won't blame them if they do. They're professionals. They don't need to put up with this crap. You also seem to have forgotten the entire cast and crew was recruited at their invitation. Once they abandon ship, Word will spread like wildfire and everyone will mutiny. With them gone, I guarantee you everyone will walk off the set. If this whole thing ends up dead in the water, you can bet your butt I'll make damn sure to point the finger at you as the reason why. If that happens, I swear on my father's grave in every way that matters, I'll be done with you. Do you understand? Do you understand? Yes. You see, Molly, I haven't trusted you for quite some time. Now I just don't like you. Get a life. One that doesn't involve me. I hung up without allowing her to respond. When I ended the call, I was raging hot. The entire conversation was cathartic and liberating. Unlike Molly, I keep my promises. I sent off all my documented evidence to Dawn, who then forwarded it to Jim, Tom, and the other producers. One by one, all of them publicly quit. They made detailed posts on their Facebook pages. Helen wasn't called out by name specifically, but anyone remotely connected to the production knew the identity of the unprofessional individual they alluded to. The production ultimately ended up being cancelled. It eventually came out that I was the only writer, and the script presented to them was plagiarized by none other than Helen herself. Those who were unaware of the behind-the-scenes drama started blowing up her social media, demanding an explanation. Helen, who always had something to say and craved attention, had finally gotten her wish granted by karma. All eyes were on her, just not in the flattering way she wanted. It should come as no surprise, Helen offered up no satisfactory answers to any questions asked, and took no responsibility for her colossal fuck-up. Unable to take the heat, she, in a demonstration of her trademark cowardice, tucked her tail between her legs and went off the grid, even though by then everyone knew of her dirty deeds. Helen never did admit she was the reason why everything went to hell in a handbasket. Shocker. For several months after that, Helen left me alone. Considering she used to stalk me online, I find it amusing she didn't notice when I blocked her on all my social media. I changed cell phone providers shortly thereafter. I also made certain that she never got my new number. I kind of wish I could have seen the epic tantrum she threw when she realized I had gotten no contact. According to Dawn, she had a meltdown that would have embarrassed a toddler. About a month after purging the leech of a fake bitch known as Helen out of my life, I got a call on my landline from an unfamiliar number with an out-of-state area code. I didn't answer, but Andrea, my roommate, listened to the voicemail. It was Helen calling to inform me that Jim, the director, had passed away due to a heart attack. Oh. I didn't listen to the message. Andrea gave me the gist. Molly sounded panicked, and in her typical entitled fashion, turned the tragedy into a story about herself. Great! Now the movie's never gonna get made. It wasn't going to be in it anyway. What a cold-hearted bitch. I was speechless. We were both stunned. Forget the fact that Jim's wife was now a widow and that his children were now fatherless, or that his grandchildren would never know their grandfather. Her ego being stoked as a grade B movie actress was more important. Andrea deleted the message, and I headed to work. Being that I was unable to block her number on the landline, Helen made another attempt to get my attention with her histrionics. I was still at work when Andrea intercepted the call. A little fact about my roommate: she is a German Jew native New Yorker with a very big mouth. She takes absolutely no crap and makes Judge Judy Wait, Judge Judy has a last name? Scheindlin? Seem like a cream puff by comparison. I'm glad I was sitting down for that. You can just imagine how that entire call went. Here's a snippet. Molly, the man died. Does that mean anything to you, you selfish... Upon being told off, Molly quickly tried to end the conversation, but not before leaving the message to have me call her back. Helen, OP blocked you on everything for reasons that are already well known to you. Fuck off. After delivering that rebuke, which left Helen in tears, Andrea hung up. Needless to say, I never did return her call. When Andrea spilled the tea of how she kicked Helen when she was down, I hugged her and bought her a bottle of her favorite sangria as a thank you. It's been over 7 years. I haven't heard from Helen since and don't care to ever again. I'm finally starting to achieve my dreams. I recently produced and had a small role in my first short film for which I wrote the script. It was such a fulfilling and rewarding experience. The whole shoot was so overwhelming in a good way. Being a big softy, I did cry on set. I'm finally doing what I know I was born to do. In case you were wondering, yes, I still plan to produce my murder mystery without any involvement from Helen. Quite frankly, I'm impressed that you got through that experience without becoming a murderer yourself. Edit, for those who've been asking, I've since met a very talented director who is as big of a movie geek as me, and is the complete antithesis of Helen. I don't leave a single exchange with him without feeling educated or inspired. He's a wonderful guy and he loves my murder mystery. Currently, there are plans to get it into development as soon as the coronavirus craziness dies down. Yeah, this was posted a little while ago. Edit Update 2. In having several in-depth conversations with Dawn, I learned of the catalyst that caused Tom and Jim to quit. Helen loved to stack messages when she wrote people. She apparently kept texting Tom, and he wrote back in a very short, brief, glib response. Helen felt that she had been disrespected, and rather than handle it like a professional, she defaulted to one of her knee-jerk entitled rants. She wrote a scathing reply insulting Tom both personally and professionally. Tom wrote back, calling Molly something along the lines of childish and petty, which only served to further infuriate her. She sought out Dawn to become her attack dog. Dawn is 6 months younger than me, quite introverted, and hates conflict. Helen had him under her thumb, so when she insisted that he write a letter to Tom defending her honor, he did. What Helen didn't count on was Dawn being hip to her manipulative schoolyard bully ways. He covered his backside by copying both Lana and Jim in the email as well. Helen also wasn't aware that Tom had sent screenshots of her bitchy messages to Jim. Lana, no doubt, was also sent copies of them. Helen realized she had screwed up when she received a scathing text/reply from Lana about the huge mess she had caused. This was what spurred Helen's panicked phone call to me, in which I introduced her to the concept of being murdered by words. On a related note, after more than 7 years, Dawn decided to take a chance and write to Tom to fill him in on everything that happened after Molly threw gasoline on the dumpster fire she had created. It turns out that Tom knew something wasn't right. It was extremely out of character for Dawn to be disrespectful to anyone. Helen counted on the wedge she had driven between the two of them staying firmly in place, which it did for a while, anyway. Recently reunited, Tom has stated he would love to work with both me and Dawn. I am also pleased to announce that Lana is also back in the picture. The plan is to use all of these wonderful people when my murder mystery goes into production. I can't hardly wait. Update 3. I reconnected with one of Helen's former friends, Amelia, with whom I was cordial during those days. Amelia had been friends with Helen for 10 years before cutting her off. After reuniting, my graphic web designer friend Dawn created a group chat between the three of us. Ever since then, Amelia has been spilling the tea left and right. It should be of no surprise whatsoever that Helen has absolutely no performing background at all. Her flimsy claim of having 20 years' experience in theatre — yeah, watching it doesn't count — is just one of the many delusional figments of her diseased mind. It turns out it was actually Amelia who was active in the local community theatre scene. Naturally, Helen was insanely jealous of her so-called best friend's talent, ambition, and go-get-'em attitude. Also, the cock and bull story about her being a former department store runway model when she lived up north is just that bullshit. She's only 5'2". Anyone who knows anything about fashion knows you have to be at least 5'7" to do runway. Amelia also confirmed that Helen has always been a lazy, unproductive member of society, and that her kids had it bad as long as she can remember. Amelia is delighted that Molly's now grown children have escaped her clutches, and have little to no contact with their poor excuse for a mother. Upon learning that Helen's daughter doesn't let her see her only grandchild, Amelia laughed maniacally and said, "Karma's a bitch." Amelia is also understandably shocked that Helen and her husband are still together. She put it, and I quote, "I'm surprised they haven't murdered each other yet." You may be wondering what led Amelia to go no contact with Helen. If you read any of my other stories, it was similar instances of rampant entitled behavior. The last straw came when then newlywed Amelia was expecting the first of her 2 children. Being the attention whore that she is, Helen was extremely jealous that Amelia never had time for her any more. She made some very cruel comments about Amelia's then unborn son. Okay, it wasn't nice, but I'm not saying that. And that pretty much ended their 10-year friendship. Amelia said her stress level dropped by 99% ever since she blocked Helen out of every aspect of her life. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story of Helen, because I have another one. Arrogant actress demands I update her resume for free. I maliciously comply. By Old Card Table. There was this lady I used to know who claimed she was an actress. Let's call her Helen. In the time that I knew her, her story kept changing. She had all this experience, yet she didn't seem to know even the basics about the industry. However, if someone had a resource she coveted, she treated them like they were the light of her life, but only for the moment. She used people as stepping stones and discarded them like trash the second they were no longer useful, or when they finally caught on to her act. In short, Helen wasn't building a good reputation, and she never saw karma coming. It didn't help at all that, on top of being a self-centered blowhard with almost no verifiable experience, her resume was more fake than my heterosexuality. Her headshots were so out of date, and since she was so broke she couldn't even afford to pay attention, she didn't have the money to pay a photographer for new ones. She subbed overly edited camera phone selfies in their place. I'm not kidding when I say the filter she used made her look like a Bratz doll. Shortly before I cut contact, she asked me, demanded, I beautify her resume and make it appear more professional. Translation, exaggerate and lie to make her false claims look believable. So I maliciously complied. It was a test to see if she'd actually review it before sending it out. I just knew she wouldn't. Under special skills I added Master of the Dunning-Kruger effect, expert at gaslighting, and embodies a supercilious manner. I emailed it back. True to form, Helen never said thank you. A few weeks later, I saw Helen periodically posting typo-filled, grammatically incorrect poor me wall of text rants, fishing for sympathy statuses about the struggles of the working actress, with interspersed out-of-context Bible verses thrown in for good measure. A mutual friend, who has also been screwed over by Helen, later told me her shiny new resume wasn't getting any bites. I can only imagine she was cold emailing people in her typical trademark style, little to no punctuation, poor grammar, shorthand, misspellings, and subject lines in all caps or no subject lines at all. Eventually word got back that Helen was furious her resume wasn't being taken seriously. She must have finally read it and realized she'd been punked. Arrogant and rotten to the core, Helen's massive ego wouldn't allow her to admit she'd been played. Such an admission would have shone a spotlight on her unprofessionalism and laziness. It also would have led to questions. Helen hated questions because she never had any satisfactory or logical answers. It's been well over 12 years since I got contact. The final straw was her complete lack of empathy when my estranged father died of lung cancer. She even tried to make the conversation about her own problems. When I called her out, the hypocrisy was nuclear. I mean, how dare I challenge her main character syndrome? These days, I recently heard through the grapevine, it's a small industry, Helen has only managed a couple of walk-on roles in movies that no one has ever seen. Thanks to her unprofessional reputation that follows her like a shadow, constant lying, plagiarism, crap-talking the competition, she's burned a lot of bridges, rightfully earning the reputation of a lying grifter with zero skills and even less talent. Story number 3, Ageism in Quilting, by $16 Muffin. My mom and I picked up quilting and sewing together about 19 or 20 years ago. She does primarily quilts. I do a little of everything, including seamstress work. We are well-recognized faces in our local community. We moved about 30-plus miles from our old home, and instead of seeing our favorite shop owners once a week, we're lucky to get down there once a quarter. When we do, it's usually to bulk buy fabric we might need for the coming months. One of our stores had hired a new woman, maybe in her 60s or so, and we had never seen her before. This store also rotates stock, and I was looking through the cheap fabric, knowing it was discounted and cheap because of how thin it is. But it had a really cute print. So I showed my mom across the store. This woman, bless her heart, said, "Oh, that's not really a good fabric. You should put it down." Something to know about me at this time. I was 30-ish, but looked like I was in my early 20s. My mom was in her early 50s. I already knew the fabric was bad, so I put it back on the shelf and rolled my eyes behind the display. While I was doing that, this woman looked my mom dead-ass in the face and stage whispered, "When you've been sewing for 10 years, sometimes you have to help our little newbie quilters," with a condescending wink. I didn't hear this. My mom sure as hell did, though, because it was directed at her like the two of them were supposed to giggle about how cute new quilters were. Not 10 seconds after I put the fabric back, my mom called me over and said, "Hey, you should show her the Judy Niemeyer you're doing. Notoriously difficult quilt pattern maker. Paper piercing, not beginner friendly. Some of her patterns even advanced quilters struggle with." So I did. I was so excited to show off this quilt I was working on. It was all circles and sharp points, and for whatever reason I couldn't figure out at this time, this lady went white like no blood on her face. All she could say was, "Oh, pretty." But my mom wasn't done. She asked in a really sarcastic way, "How long have we been quilting?" I answered, "Almost 16 years now," like super confused. I thought this lady was going to faint. My mother has always been spicy, especially when it comes to our art. After checkout, Mom told me all this went down, and I was horrified and thrilled my mom was so defensive with this lady. Sometimes it still happens if people don't know us, but the ones that do roll their eyes when it happens and cut our fabric for us instead. We're actually going to a quilt retreat today, and it made me think about this interaction. Okie dokie, story number 4 is The Pizzeria by Silly Little Winky. In 2010, I got out of the military. A lot of my friends were attending a particular party college in upstate New York, and I wanted to get away from the rigidity of the military life and basically go be a bro and hang with the guys for their last semester. During my time there, I got a job delivering pizza. It was all right. I figured I made maybe $13 an hour after gas and expenses. Not bad. I was never late, worked consistently, and went above and beyond if needed. But it felt like there was this sense that I just wasn't in with the crowd there. No big deal, I was new, and it's not the end of the world. We did still joke, have a good time, communicated well enough, and got orders out. That's what matters. Once in a while, there was just this sense of implied, "You're below us and will never be on our level" fake vibe. I do believe there was a bit of a small-town Dunning-Kruger effect going on. There it is again. They were all from that relatively unheard-of area, and only knew life in that pizzeria, not well-traveled, and thought they were big shots for the tiny world they lived in. About a dozen of us worked there. The owner and his son ran the operations. Other local hillbillies did the rest. Snarky comments and attitudes that were unjust were not uncommon. They'd have broken kitchen equipment, with no intention of fixing it, yet if you had trouble operating it or ran into an issue, it was your fault, not their fault, for their inability to fix the faulty parts. They had a table with a broken leg used for drying plates and cutlery, etc. One day, I placed a crock-pot on it after washing then drying the pot, and it slid off due to the steep slope of the table and shattered. And they got furious. It was my incompetence, not their broken table. Ah, yes, of course. What really did it for me was when Mac Miller came to town. He was holding a concert at the college, and it was basically the big event of the year. We all had begun talking about it. Being I was a veteran, there was a limited number of heavily discounted tickets available for military concert-goers, which is a really nice thing. I think they were like 50% off, and you could buy up to 8 if I remember correctly. Suddenly, after mentioning that at work, the guys wanted to go with me. The head pizza guy, young dude, asked me to use my discount to get his tickets and he'd pay me back. Then we could all go together. Normally I do not like abusing the privilege of a military discount by buying things for non-vets, because I feel it's disrespectful to the vendor. But I just wanted to do it this one time. Hook up the guys. I may have also gotten tickets for his non-work friends, I forget, and go together. I wound up getting maybe 6 tickets, don't quote me on that. I was fully paid back at work, and we agreed to meet before the event. But I had a bad feeling about this, like I wasn't invited despite buying the tickets. Sure enough, day of the concert, I hit them up and get no reply. There is no meetup. At the event I remember seeing them there with their people, and I just went alone. It was a pretty depressing feeling. To be treated like that was unnecessary. I never did anything to these guys, and they just used me for my veteran status, then ghosted me. I was ready for the excuses back at work too. Oh, my phone died. I just saw your text now, yada yada. To add to it, I bought a Mac Miller shirt, and it was stolen by the girl behind me at the concert. I never got it back. Anyways, back at work, sure enough, the excuses poured in. Oh, my bad, sorry I was busy, didn't check my phone, did you still go? Okay, game on. That's how we're going to do it? I knew I was ready to leave that place, but first I was going to steal from them, and I knew how. I know it's petty. You're a veteran and should act with honor. I know, but I wanted to do it, and I did. Honor's a matter of perspective. Ask a Klingon. No, wait, they're not real. I forget sometimes. Every day that I returned from delivering pizzas, I had to give them the receipts from the day, and the cash to go with the totals. If there was $500 in orders, I'd give them receipts with the $500 and keep the difference as a tip. But there was a major flaw. They didn't keep their side of the receipts because they were lazy or dumb, so relied on me to just report back with all the accurate receipts every day. Out of a few dozen orders a day, they would easily forget a few. It's human nature. Some orders were very memorable because they gave us trouble, had unique requests, or were super big deliveries. I didn't withhold those receipts, just the average ones, 2 pepperoni pizzas, a large pie with wings, basic stuff. They had also left a window cracked at night that could be broken into, and the register was left with $200. But I didn't want to do all that. Just thought about it because I hated them so much. But $200 was small and not worth the hassle of breaking and entering. Plus, this plan could generate more. I knew I could take $40 to $60 per shift using these withheld receipts and not raise any suspicion. Not only would it be low-key, but in the long run, would total much more than $200 if done right, and that's what I did. These guys were so cocky and thought they were slick, used me for my military discount, thought I fell for their BS excuses and was just a dummy employee to use and dispose of. There also was a sense I'd be fired any day now. I took about $20 to $80 from them a day, depending on the day's volume and how the flow of business felt. If it was a slow day, I took less. Busy, I took more, maybe averaged $50 a day. I did this for like 2 months and probably got, I don't know, $1,500 to $2,000 from the scam. When they fired me one day, the owner's son wasn't kind about it. He came in like a bully and not a leader, told me that the broken crock-pot was a major issue, along with other things that he did not mention. He acted very tough and imposing, like he was some giga alpha or whatever as he did this. Unnecessary machismo, mixed with ego and the false sense that because Daddy had a pizza shop, that he was important or something. I said okay, and left. I knew they never found out about the receipts because he would have demanded the money back ASAP and went berserk. Never did. Good for me. Years later, in 2019, I went back to that time. I decided to stop in the shop and grab a slice. Not say a word, see if the staff was the same or if anyone recognized me. Just out of curiosity. Why not? No ill will. The second I walked in, the head pizza guy, the one who used me for the veteran discount, was still there making slices. He immediately did a head nod and said, "Oh wait, didn't you used to work here?" Followed by asking if I also lived there still. I got my slice and soda and sat down. The quality had greatly declined, and I'm really not trying to be petty, it genuinely did. He mentioned that they changed the sauce in the recipe. Also that he'd bought the business and the owner had left. He had another guy working there, and the new guy asked, "He used to be an employee here?" referring to me. Well, Dushman thought I couldn't hear him and said, "Yeah, and we fired his ass," or something slick and petty, as he usually would do. I just brushed it off, though I wanted to say, "Yeah, and if you only knew how much I stole from you guys before leaving this dump." But I just let it go. Glad to see he still hasn't done shit with his life, and is still in the same kitchen. Also glad that I got a degree at a different university, moved to one of the best cities in the US, got a good Fortune 500 job, and got far away from that hillbilly town. I try to take the high road in life, but sometimes along the way we get to be petty, and I have no regrets. Okie-dokie. Fifth and final story is, I guess, No More Electric Poles, by Imzigen. This is a bit of a long story. My godfather owns a small cattle ranch out in the countryside. About 20 to 25 years ago, he needed electricity to power a water pump for his cows. The nearest place where he could connect to the grid was on the opposite side of the ranch, probably about 1.5 miles away, so he paid to have utility poles installed across his property. It was a significant investment, but he figured that constantly running diesel pumps would eventually cost more than installing the poles and connecting to the grid. Sometime later, a few neighbors who lived on the far side of the ranch asked whether they could piggyback off his electrical line. He agreed, they paid to install a few additional poles, and the electric company placed their meters on the other side. So far, so good. There were only a handful of small farmhouses, and the additional poles were located somewhere they didn't interfere with the ranch. Eventually, fiber optic cable was installed on the poles as well. Everything worked perfectly for roughly 20 years. Then about 2 years ago, a real estate developer bought the land on the other side of the ranch and began preparing it for a cottage development. They didn't exactly get off to a great start with my godfather. They complained about the animals, the smell, and the noise from the tractors and other equipment. A farm? Doing farm things? Now I've heard everything. His response was basically, if you choose to live next to a working ranch, you have to accept that ranching will be happening there. While planning the development, they discovered another problem. 2 miles of 20-year-old electrical cable worked well enough for a few small farmhouses, but it wasn't capable of supplying the 10 to 15 cottages they planned to build. And let's be honest, they're going to cheap the fuck out on the insulation, the materials, and that anyway, right? I think we all know that's going to happen. Houses these days are built to be sold and built people for as much money as they can. They're not sold to be livable. Sorry. I watched too many videos about construction. They approached the electric company about upgrading the infrastructure. That was when everyone apparently discovered, or finally acknowledged, that the poles crossing my godfather's ranch were privately owned. To avoid making this story even longer, lawyers became involved. In the end, the electric company and the developer told my godfather that he had 2 choices: allow the electric company to replace his poles with concrete ones and grant them a permanent right-of-way across his ranch for maintenance, or remove the poles. So that Sunday, my godfather got on the tractor they use for installing fences and pulled out every single pole. He told me that when he originally installed the line, he only had about 1/5 as many cattle as he had now. His new plan is to install some solar panels, run a smaller pumping system, and make it work. The development company, meanwhile, will probably have to install 3 or 4 miles of entirely new poles to bring electricity to the cottages. Electricity that was apparently already included in what they promised buyers. My godfather jokingly says it's interesting how unusually hot this summer has been. Fortunately, he recently brought in some pigs, and they require less water than the cattle, so they're easier to keep hydrated and fed. Purely a coincidence, of course. Right, that brings us to the end of today's video. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. If you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. $1 or more, whatever you're comfortable with, supports the channel every month, and you get all the videos at once on Monday. There's also a link to my merchandise store over on Teespring. There's my Discord server, my Threads account, and my email is kingofthecities@gmail.com if you need to contact me. That's everything for now, so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.